At Harvard Medical School, researchers discovered that the human brain at midnight behaves almost like a different creature. Decisions made in those hours are more reckless, temptations feel stronger, and shadows in the mind grow taller than they are in the daylight. Some call it biology, others call it psychology. But across history, wise men and prophets whispered another truth, that midnight is the hour where unseen battles rage. Not out there in the forest with witches and spells, but here, inside your very soul. And if you lose the battle of midnight, you may lose the strength of your tomorrow. At Harvard, a study once revealed that after midnight the brain is not the same as it is in the day. Logic bends, desires intensify, risk-taking impulses climb like a fever. People make choices at 2 o'clock in the morning they would laugh at in the sunlight. It is as though a curtain falls over reason, and a new stage appears where darker actors take the lead. This is not simply science, it is the echo of something the ancients always knew. Midnight has always been the battlefield where the unseen wages war against the human soul. Think about it. The world is quieter, the noise of the day has faded, and yet the silence is not peace. In that silence, the voices of your own thoughts become louder. The regrets of yesterday, the fears of tomorrow, the temptations of right now, they creep in like whispers. That is why midnight has been called the testing ground of the spirit. In folklore, witches gathered at that hour, not because they loved the darkness itself, but because they knew it was the time when the human heart stood most unguarded. Science tells us the mind grows tired as the day drags on. Willpower, which feels strong in the morning, is like a muscle that weakens after it has been used. By midnight, it has nearly collapsed. That is when a teenager, tired from a day, begins to scroll endlessly on a glowing phone screen, comparing their life to strangers online until insecurity turns into despair. That is when an adult overwhelmed by stress says yes to one more drink, one more episode, one more distraction that robs them of tomorrow's strength. Midnight rarely destroys a life in one blow. Midnight erodes it quietly, choice by choice, while the world is sleeping. There is something profoundly symbolic about the very hour. Midnight is neither the end of yesterday nor the beginning of today. It is both. It is a threshold, a crossing place, and thresholds in every ancient story are sacred. To cross them requires decision. Stand still, and you are trapped in shadows. Step forward with courage, and you enter morning. It is no accident that great writers, prophets, and mystics spoke of midnight as the moment of visitation, the hour where light and darkness test the heart of man. Psychologists speak of decision fatigue, the weariness of making too many choices in a single day. By midnight, the brain has fought countless small battles: what to eat, what to wear, how to respond, how to survive. The defenses grow thin. That is why people spend money at night they regret in the morning. That is why people text words they wish they could erase. That is why the smallest worry turns into a monster in the mind's cave. The witch at midnight does not need to strike with spells. She only needs to whisper when the walls are weak. Yet, there is another side to this story. Midnight is not only danger, it is also promise. The very darkness that tempts can also teach. It reveals what you are made of. When the world is stripped away and only your soul speaks, midnight becomes a mirror. Who are you when no one is watching, when the masks of the day are gone, when the applause is silent? The answer to that question shapes the destiny of your tomorrow. If you conquer the temptations of midnight, you rise into the dawn with a strength few ever taste. Picture the entrepreneur lying awake at 1 a.m., staring at the ceiling. Fear paints every plan as a failure, every dream as foolishness. If he surrenders to that voice, he wakes discouraged and breaks his own vision. But if he takes the pen, writes his plan, and turns anxiety into prayer or reflection, he has taken the midnight witch and turned her curse into wisdom. Picture the young mother, exhausted, tempted to fill her loneliness with noise or endless screens. Yet she chooses stillness, silence, rest. In that choice, she gains the strength to nurture her family with love. These are not small decisions. They are wars won in secret. Midnight is the dividing line of destiny. For some, it is the hour of wasted time, numbing addictions, reckless impulses. For others, it is the hour of sacred silence, where the mind rests, the soul breathes, and the body recovers. Every midnight is an altar where you either sacrifice your future or prepare it. And though it feels ordinary, just another night, just another hour, it is anything but. The difference between a wasted life and a wise life is often hidden in the quiet choices made when the world is asleep. The ancients were right to cloak midnight in mystery, for it is the place where heaven and hell both lean close, each waiting for your choice. The body whispers, "Give in." The shadows whisper, "You are weak." Yet the spirit whispers, "Rise, endure, rest, choose the light." The smallest act of discipline, the smallest moment of prayer, the smallest refusal of temptation at midnight can tip the balance of a life. That is why midnight matters. That is why the battle of the mind is not just science, not just folklore, but the secret theater of the human soul. The strangest thing about midnight is that it exposes the fault lines in our character. In the brightness of day, when people are watching, most of us can manage to appear strong, balanced, in control. The sunlight gives us energy, the presence of others holds us accountable, the rhythm of work and responsibility keeps us upright. But when the clock strikes 12 and the world withdraws, you are left alone with yourself. It is in that solitude that the real battles are fought. A man is never so naked as he is at midnight, when no one applauds his virtue and no one sees his surrender. There is an old saying that demons fear the dawn because the light exposes them. The truth is not the demons that fear dawn. It is the human heart that longs for light because it cannot carry shadows forever. That is why many fall in the hours after midnight. They are too tired to resist, too weary to hope, too numb to care. It is then that the witch of despair sits by the bedside, whispering that tomorrow will be no different than yesterday, that the mistakes are too heavy, that the future is already broken. If you have ever lain awake at 3 a.m. staring into the dark ceiling, feeling the weight of 1,000 invisible stones pressing your chest, you know that voice. And yet, science reminds us that the very mind creating those monsters is exhausted, chemically altered by sleeplessness, stripped of its defenses. The amygdala, the part of the brain that processes fear, becomes overactive without rest. Rational thought from the prefrontal cortex weakens. In that fragile hour, a tiny problem balloons into catastrophe. A late bill becomes the end of your security. A small argument with a loved one becomes proof the relationship is doomed. A single failure feels like the collapse of your entire life. What witches were said to do in the forest with potions and curses is what your own mind does in silence. It enchants you with illusions. The tragedy is that many never realize these illusions are temporary. They make permanent decisions in temporary darkness. A young man at midnight, convinced life is meaningless, decides to give up not only on his dream, but on himself. A young woman, lonely in the shadows, seeks comfort in a relationship she knows will break her. An adult, staring at the bills, clicks on an online gambling site just to escape the fear for one night. These are the ways midnight steals futures, not with broomsticks and cauldrons, but with quiet half-truths whispered into vulnerable minds. But if midnight is dangerous, it is also sacred. Think of the stories that shape our culture. Many of the greatest awakenings come at night. Monks prayed in monasteries by candlelight, wrestlers of faith cried out in gardens, inventors scribbled equations in the stillness of early hours. Midnight can be an altar where the ordinary man meets the eternal. It is no accident that songs, psalms, and poetry across centuries speak of songs in the night. What is being sung is not the absence of darkness, but the defiance of it. To understand midnight as a battlefield is to reclaim your agency in the fight. You are not helpless before its shadows. You are not destined to lose. The question is, will you arm yourself before the hour strikes? Will you set the boundaries, form the habits, and cultivate the light strong enough to resist the voices when they come? A soldier does not wait until the war begins to sharpen his sword. In the same way, the wise soul prepares for midnight long before the clock strikes 12. Think of the power of something as simple as a bedtime ritual. The person who silences their phone, lights a candle, prays, or journals before midnight creates a fortress in the mind. They are telling the subconscious, you belong to the light. That is not superstition, it is psychology and spirit woven together. It calms the nervous system, focuses the wandering thoughts, and strengthens the inner will. It is not glamorous. No one will applaud you for turning off your screen and laying your head on the pillow. But you will wake in the morning with strength that the midnight which could not steal. Now consider the opposite. The person who drifts into midnight without intention opens the door wide. Screens glow until 2 in the morning. Words are typed in anger that can never be unsent. Hours slip away in distractions. that feel harmless in the moment but leave the soul hollow. When dawn arrives, they rise exhausted, resentful, behind on everything. This pattern, repeated night after night, does not only affect the body, it corrodes identity. Slowly the person becomes someone else, less confident, less joyful, more enslaved to habits they did not choose. Midnight was not neutral. Midnight was a thief. Yet let us not despair, for the thief can be resisted. Even the smallest act of reclaiming midnight is powerful. When you choose to read words of wisdom instead of drowning in endless feeds, you resist. When you choose to rest instead of forcing one more task, you resist. When you choose prayer, reflection, or silence instead of noise, you resist. Each choice is a torch lifted in the darkness, and torches, no matter how small, always defeat shadows. Think of history. Great revolutions of thought, movements of freedom, and breakthroughs of art were often birthed in the quiet hours of night. Midnight, when tamed, becomes a workshop for the soul. The same silence that tempts can also inspire. The same solitude that crushes can also create. The difference lies in how you choose to stand in that hour. Midnight will test you, but tests are not curses. They are invitations to discover what lives inside you. The question is not whether the witches of midnight will visit, for in one way or another, they come for all. The question is whether you will rise, prepared, anchored, awake in spirit, even as the body longs for rest. If you do, midnight will not break you. Midnight will build you. It will chisel away the falsehoods, sharpen the truth, and leave you ready to greet the dawn with unshakable strength. At midnight, the most dangerous voice you hear is not the one outside your window or in the world beyond, but the one inside your head. The world has always told stories about witches and demons whispering curses in the dark, but the deepest harm is not when they shake the walls of your house. It is when they plant words in your heart. Words have always been spells, and the most destructive spell is the lie you believe about yourself. The human being is not broken most often by storms or enemies or disasters, but by the quiet erosion of identity. The battle of life is not simply about what you do, it is about who you think you are. It begins in the smallest ways. A teenager scrolling through endless pictures at 1 a.m. begins to hear the whisper, "You are not enough. Your face is wrong, your body is wrong, your talent is not worthy, your dreams are childish." Those words are not shouted. They are not printed in red letters. They are soft, almost unnoticeable, like fog creeping into the window. At first they feel like your own thoughts, like simple reflections. Yet they are thieves dressed as friends. They disguise themselves as honesty when they are sabotage. What the ancients called witchcraft we now call psychology, but the power is the same. Lies spoken again and again settle into the soil of the subconscious, and once they take root they grow into trees that shape the whole forest of your life. Science has confirmed what poets and prophets have always suspected. The brain records repetition as truth. The more you hear something, even if it is false, the more your neurons create pathways to reinforce it. Midnight becomes dangerous not only because you are tired, but because you are alone with repetition. You replay the comment of the bully, the criticism of a parent, the rejection of a friend. You begin to whisper it to yourself without even realizing it. And slowly, your very identity bends under the weight. The man who is born with courage begins to believe he is weak. The girl who was created with beauty begins to believe she is unworthy. The child who is meant to sing begins to believe his voice is unwanted. This is how destinies collapse not in one explosion, but in 1,000 whispers. The spiritual traditions of the world speak with one voice on this. They tell us that truth sets people free, but lies enslave. They tell us that we are made in the image of something greater, that we carry dignity, purpose, and divine spark. Yet in the silence of midnight, those truths are attacked. It is not coincidence that religions describe the adversary as a deceiver, a tempter, a liar. The battle is not against flesh and blood, but against illusions and falsehoods that creep into the heart. To believe you are worthless is a kind of possession. It chains the soul more tightly than iron. Consider the adult sitting in the office late into the night. Papers are stacked high, bills are due, responsibilities weigh heavy. The whisper comes, "You are failing. You will never be enough." Others succeed because they are smarter, stronger, luckier, and you are destined to remain behind. This adult may laugh in the daylight, smile with friends, play the role of competence. But in the hours past midnight, the mask slips, and the whisper grows louder. In that silence, he begins to make decisions from despair. He shrinks his vision, stops dreaming, accepts less than he is capable of. The witch does not need to kill him with poison. She only needs to whisper until he kills his own ambition. Identity is not a small thing. It is the compass of life. If the compass is broken, every step goes in the wrong direction. If you believe you are weak, you will never step into the arena even if you have the strength of a lion. If you believe you are unlovable, you will sabotage every relationship even if others long to embrace you. If you believe you are cursed, you will interpret every setback as proof and never see the doors opening before you. That is why midnight whispers are so dangerous. They do not only hurt feelings, they sculpt futures. Psychologists call this the inner critic, the voice in your head that grows louder when you are tired, stressed, or isolated. It is not harmless. It changes your chemistry. Thoughts trigger emotions, emotions trigger hormones, hormones shape actions, and actions become habits. A whisper at midnight can ripple into a whole life of quiet misery. A girl who believed she was ugly stops applying for opportunities. A man who believed he was doomed to fail never starts the business. A child who believed he was stupid grows into an adult who never opens a book. These are not small lies. They are curses that shape generations. And yet there is a mystery here. If lies have power, truth has greater power. The same brain that records repetition as truth can be rewired. The same spirit that bends under falsehood can rise when fed with light. Midnight may be the hour of whispers, but it can also be the hour of resistance. The young person who replaces comparison with gratitude, who writes affirmations of worth before sleeping, who speaks blessings into the silence, is not practicing superstition. They are practicing soul defense. They are planting seeds of identity that will bloom in daylight. Think of a soldier guarding a fortress. He does not only fight when the enemy arrives. He strengthens the walls, checks the gates, sharpens his weapon. In the same way, identity must be guarded. You do not wait until the whispers come to decide who you are. You anchor yourself in truth long before the midnight hour. You remind yourself that your worth is not measured by numbers on a scale, by likes on a screen, by dollars in a bank, by applause in a crowd. Your worth is inherent, unshaken, given. Those who live with that anchor do not escape the whispers, but they silence them. Consider the story of an artist who grew up hearing that art was useless, that creativity was a waste of time. He believed the whispers for years, worked jobs he hated, silenced the voice inside. But one night, sitting alone, he heard a different whisper. Not the lie of worthlessness, but the truth of calling. He picked up the brush again. What began as one midnight act of courage grew into a life of beauty. The lie tried to bury him, but truth resurrected him. This is why midnight should not only terrify us, it should inspire us. For the whisper that says you are nothing can be met with the whisper that says you are beloved. The voice that says you will fail can be countered by the voice that says you are capable. The shadow that says you are weak can be pushed aside by the light that says you were created with strength. Each night you are given a choice. Will you let the witch write your story, or will you take the pen back into your own hands? Do not underestimate how simple the counterattack can be. A single prayer, a single line of gratitude written in a journal, a single song sung into the dark can drown the lies. Science calls it neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire. Spirit calls it renewal, the mind's transformation. Both are true. Both agree that identity can be remade. And the battlefield is often no larger than your pillow and your thoughts in the hours when the world sleeps. The whisper is subtle. It does not announce itself. That is why you must learn to recognize it. Pay attention to the words you repeat in your own mind. Ask yourself, would I speak these words to a child I love? Would I tell my best friend he is hopeless, worthless, doomed? If not, why do I speak them to myself? Begin to treat your soul as tenderly as you would a loved one. Guard it from lies. Feed it truth. Midnight becomes less frightening when you become your own ally instead of your own enemy. Identity is destiny. Lose it and you lose the map. Guard it, and you can walk through storms without drowning. At midnight, the witches whisper, not because you are weak, but because you are powerful. They know that if you ever believe the truth of your worth, you will rise with unstoppable force. That is why they whisper. They cannot steal your strength, so they try to convince you that you have none. They cannot erase your purpose, so they try to convince you that you never had one. They cannot destroy your future, so they try to persuade you to destroy it yourself. But here is the secret. Lies have no power except the power you give them. The moment you stop believing, the spell breaks. The moment you declare, even in trembling, that you are more than the shadows, the chains fall. Midnight may be the hour of lies, but dawn is always coming. Every whisper in the dark must bow to the truth in the light. The question is whether you will endure long enough to hear the morning birds sing. So when you lie awake and hear the voices that say you are not enough, remember this: you are not hearing the truth. You are hearing the desperation of the darkness trying to keep you from rising. Do not let it win. Speak truth louder than the lies. Sing in the night until morning comes. Write words of hope until the fog lifts. Rest in the knowledge that your worth does not depend on what you feel in the midnight hour. It is unshaken, eternal given. Let midnight test you. Let it whisper, and then let your soul answer with courage. For the lie cannot outlast the truth, and the shadow cannot outshine the light. When you know who you are, no witch, no whisper, no midnight can take it from you. Time is the only treasure that can never be replaced, and yet it is the treasure we squander most carelessly. Gold can be mined again, houses can be rebuilt, even health can sometimes be restored, but not 1 second can be relived. When the clock strikes midnight and distractions creep in, they are not merely offering entertainment, they are thieves with velvet gloves, stealing the very hours that shape your destiny. People often think of theft as something dramatic, a burglar smashing windows or a criminal breaking locks, but the most dangerous theft is the quiet one that happens while you are wide awake yet unaware. At midnight, while your eyes are glued to a glowing screen, while your attention is caught by endless streams of noise, your greatest wealth is slipping through your fingers. It does not take a philosopher to recognize this, only honesty. How many mornings have begun with the heavy regret of realizing you traded sleep for nothing? How many nights have been surrendered to a show you hardly remember, a scroll through headlines that left you more anxious than informed, a conversation with strangers online, while the people you love sleep in the next room untouched by your presence? Time is consumed not in grand decisions but in little bites, and the thief prefers it that way. If someone stole a year from you, you would rage. But when midnight steals an hour every night, you shrug, not realizing that in 1 year those hours equal weeks, and in a lifetime they equal decades. Science has been screaming this truth for years, but most close their ears. Sleep deprivation erodes memory, weakens the immune system, blunts creativity, shortens lifespan. To rob yourself of rest is not just to feel tired, it is to accelerate decay. Students who stay awake into the dark hours convince themselves they are productive, yet their brains file information poorly, their concentration collapses, their problem-solving grows dull. Adults believe they are buying freedom by stretching the night, yet their moods fracture, their patience thins, their ability to handle stress crumbles. To give away your midnight hours is to sell tomorrow's clarity for tonight's illusion of control. But it is deeper than biology. Time carries a sacred quality. Ancient wisdom teaches that each day is a gift, and with each sunrise a portion of your life is entrusted to you. To waste it is not merely inefficient, it is dishonor. When midnight offers distraction, it is not only stealing energy, it is mocking purpose. The student with dreams of invention, the mother with dreams of nurturing, the worker with dreams of building, all of them lose ground when they allow their hours to vanish. Midnight whispers, stay a little longer, watch a little more, do nothing important, just drift. And in that drifting, greatness withers before it is born. Think of the stories that haunt our culture. The elderly man in his rocking chair who sighs and says, "I wish I had spent more time with my children." The artist who admits she never created the masterpiece she envisioned. The worker who realizes his entire life was consumed by tasks that vanished with the company that hired him. These regrets are not accidents. They are the natural harvest of time given away. Every wasted midnight is a seed planted, and the crop is regret. The thief does not strike only once. It comes every night, stealing a few coins from the purse until one day the purse is empty and the owner wonders where it all went. There is a haunting reality here. When you waste money, you might recover. When you waste possessions, you can replace them. But when you waste time, it is gone forever. The conversation not had with your child will not return. The book not written remains unwritten. The prayers unsaid are silenced. The wisdom unlearned leaves you weaker. People talk about losing time as though it were like misplacing keys, but time is not lost. It is spent, and it is often spent on things that give nothing back. At midnight, the danger grows because your defenses are low. You are tired, so the decision to waste feels easier. You are lonely, so the distraction feels comforting. You are restless, so the noise feels necessary. The truth is that the hour itself has a weight. Cultures for centuries have described midnight as a crossroads, the time when choices echo more loudly into the soul. The stories of witches dancing at midnight are not just tales of superstition. They are metaphors for temptations stealing the hours of your life while you are too weary to notice. Yet there is hope. The same hour that destroys can also create. Some of the greatest works of literature were written in the quiet of night. Some of the deepest prayers were whispered when the world was sleeping. Some of the most profound discoveries were born from those who disciplined themselves to guard their hours instead of letting them slip away. The thief can be resisted. The treasure can be protected. It begins not with grand resolutions, but with awareness. To notice how precious time is, to feel its weight, to treat each hour as a coin of eternity, is to begin reclaiming your life. Think of a craftsman who polishes wood. Each stroke matters. Each detail shapes the final piece. He does not rush, but neither does he waste motion. He understands that his time is the one resource he can never recover. What if we lived like that? What if every night we asked, is this hour building something eternal or is it being stolen? That simple question would change everything. Midnight would no longer be a playground for thieves, but a workshop for meaning. This is not only about productivity, it is about presence. The time you guard at night becomes the energy you give to others by day. A parent who sleeps instead of drifting into meaningless distraction wakes to hug a child with joy instead of irritability. A worker who rests instead of scrolling gives their best creativity to their craft. A student who sleeps instead of binge-watching lectures with clarity instead of fog. Protecting your time is not selfish. It is love made practical. And yet there is another layer. Time is not only for tasks. It is for the soul. When you give your hours to noise, you rob yourself of silence, and silence is where the soul breathes. Midnight has the power to heal when it is used well. Sit in the quiet with a notebook, and suddenly patterns of your life emerge. Whisper gratitude in prayer, and suddenly your spirit lightens. Breathe slowly, rest deeply, and suddenly tomorrow feels possible. But if midnight is wasted, the soul is starved. No wonder so many feel empty. They are feeding on shadows and wondering why they hunger. Consider the difference between two people. One wastes their midnight in endless distraction. They wake late, their mind cluttered, their body weary, their heart heavy. The other protects their midnight, closing the door on thieves, opening the door to rest and reflection. They wake alert, their mind clear, their body steady, their heart anchored. The two may live on the same street, work in the same building, but their lives diverge like paths in a forest. One walks in circles, always behind, always wishing. The other walks forward, carving meaning out of each day. That difference is not fate. It is choice. And the choice is made in the quiet hours when the treasure of time is either stolen or guarded. There is a saying that death comes like a thief in the night, and perhaps that is true, but the greater thief is the one you invite by wasting the night. Death may end your days, but distraction wastes them while you are still alive. The saddest funerals are not those of the old, but those of the living who buried their purpose long before their body died. And the burial often happens in the dark hours, one wasted night at a time. But imagine the opposite. Imagine the dignity of a life where time was treasured. Imagine reaching the last day knowing you did not let midnight steal from you. You built, you loved, you rested, you lived awake. Such a life does not happen by accident. It happens by guarding the hours with reverence. It happens by remembering that each day is not promised and each night is a crossroads. So tonight, when midnight comes, pause. Ask yourself what treasure is in your hand. Will you throw it away for noise, or will you spend it on something eternal? Will you give it to thieves, or will you guard it as a gift? The answer will not only shape your tomorrow, it will shape your legacy. Time is the one treasure you carry that no one can give back once it is gone. Protect it, and your life will shine with meaning. Waste it, and the thief will laugh as your destiny dissolves into shadows. The clock will strike, the choice will arrive, and you will know deep inside that you are standing at the gates of the most valuable vault in existence. Do not let it be plundered. Take your treasure, guard it with your soul, and spend it with wisdom, for nothing is more sacred, nothing is more fleeting, and nothing is more powerful than the hours you are given. Addiction rarely arrives as a storm. It begins as a drizzle, a faint mist that seems harmless, almost refreshing. Few people set out to bind themselves in chains. No one says, "Tonight I will plant the seed of slavery in my own soul." The tragedy is that addiction is always disguised as comfort, as fun, as escape, and the disguise is most convincing at midnight. The world is hushed, the defenses are low, the body is weary, and in that silence the invitation arrives. Just once it whispers. Just one drink more, just one video more, just one glance more, just one puff more. The voice never says just forever. It only asks for one night, one moment, one small concession. Yet every chain in history was forged link by link, and every addiction that ruins a life began with one seed sown in the dark. Think of a teenager sitting in his room with the glow of a screen. He tells himself he is simply curious. He clicks one link, then another, each leading him further down a path he never planned to walk. He believes he can stop whenever he wishes, yet his brain is already rewiring, his dopamine receptors already learning a new rhythm, his heart already giving a piece of itself away. He thinks he is exploring, but the witch at midnight is planting seeds. And seeds, when watered by repetition, grow roots too deep to easily pull out. Science has revealed the trickery of these midnight moments. The human brain is designed to reward novelty with a burst of pleasure. At night, when the rational centers of the brain are tired, the craving for novelty becomes more persuasive. What felt like a bad idea in daylight feels irresistible in the dark. This is why so many confessions begin with the phrase, "I don't know why I did it." They did it because the guard was asleep and the thief was awake. The body begged for release, the mind begged for escape, and in that fragile space the seed was planted. Addiction does not demand your soul on the first night. It waits. It thrives in patience. It waits for repetition. The teenager who said just once repeats it again next week. The adult who said just one glass says the same thing the next night. The worker who said just a few minutes of scrolling finds that the clock has raced toward morning. Slowly, the soil of habit grows fertile, and what was once a choice becomes a compulsion. The witch of midnight does not need to strike with thunder. She only needs to whisper until the victim waters the seed with their own hands. And then something darker begins. What started as comfort becomes prison. The very thing that promised freedom now demands servitude. The glass that once calmed anxiety now creates it if left unfilled. The screen that once distracted from loneliness now magnifies it when turned off. The cigarette that once gave the illusion of control now controls every breath. Addiction is cruel because it reverses the promise. It begins as joy and ends as grief. It begins as escape and ends as captivity. It begins with laughter and ends with shame. But let us not treat addiction only as chemicals and habits. It is spiritual. At the heart of every addiction is a wound. Midnight does not only tempt because the body is weak, but because the soul is aching. The drink soothes rejection. The scrolling hides emptiness. The smoke distracts from grief. The substance, the screen, the habit are not the root. They are the medicine cabinet for wounds left untreated. The witch at midnight is not only planting seeds of habit, she is planting seeds of forgetfulness. She whispers, "You don't need to deal with the pain, just cover it." And the covering becomes the cage. This is why breaking free is so hard. To resist the addiction is not only to resist the substance, but to face the wound it was covering. The person who tries to stop must not only say no to the bottle, the pill, the screen, but must also say yes to the pain that rises when the distraction is gone. This is the valley so many cannot bear. They would rather live chained than walk through the grief, the loneliness, the anger that addiction was hiding. And yet freedom requires it. Freedom requires courage not only to resist temptation, but to heal the heart beneath it. Think of the parent who comes home each night exhausted. At midnight, instead of resting, they pour another glass. It numbs the disappointment of a life that feels smaller than their dreams. It hides the ache of regret, the weariness of responsibility. They tell themselves it is harmless. Yet their children see the pattern, their body pays the price, their soul grows dull. Years pass, and the habit is no longer a choice, but a master. What began as a small relief has stolen their time, their health, their presence. And when they look back, they wonder when the seed grew into a tree, so tall it blocked the sun. Yet there is another path. Midnight does not have to be the hour of planting seeds of addiction. It can be the hour of planting seeds of freedom. The same moment of loneliness that drives one person to addiction can drive another to prayer. The same moment of boredom that drives one person to distraction can drive another to creation. The same moment of despair that drives one person to the bottle can drive another to reflection, to change, to courage. The soil of midnight is neutral. It grows what you plant. If you plant escape, you reap chains. If you plant discipline, you reap strength. If you plant truth, you reap freedom. The key is awareness. Addiction thrives in secrecy. It grows when we tell ourselves no one will notice. It doesn't matter, it's just once. Bringing it into the light weakens it. Speaking it aloud to a friend, admitting it to yourself, praying it to God, writing it in a journal, these are acts of war. They expose the witch's whisper and strip it of power. For darkness only rules while it is hidden. Once it is named, it begins to lose its hold. There are countless stories of those who overcame. The man who flushed the pills and walked into a support group. The woman who deleted the apps and filled her night with study instead. The young person who told a mentor the truth and discovered love stronger than shame. Each story is a testimony that addiction is not invincible. The chains can be broken, but not by pretending they don't exist. They are broken by facing them, by choosing light over shadow, by replacing the seed of slavery with the seed of freedom. Addiction is not about weakness. It is about misused strength. The same passion that binds a person can be redirected to build. The same intensity that feeds the habit can fuel creativity, love, service. Midnight tries to convince you that your life belongs to the addiction. The truth is that your life belongs to something greater, something luminous, something eternal. You were not born to serve shadows. You were born to walk in light. So when midnight comes and the whisper arrives, pause. Remember that what feels small is not small. What feels harmless is not harmless. Every seed grows. Ask yourself, what kind of tree am I planting tonight? One that will shade me in peace or one that will entangle me in chains? The answer lies in the choice you make while the world is sleeping. And though the choice feels small, it shapes eternity. There is nothing more tragic than a life given away to chains that were chosen. And there is nothing more beautiful than a life that resists that. Rises, that refuses to let addiction define its story. Midnight is the battlefield, but you are not powerless. The witch can whisper, but she cannot force. The seed can be offered, but you choose whether to plant it. Choose wisely, and the tree that grows will not be one of slavery, but of freedom, strength, and life. Fear is a strange visitor. It does not knock at the door politely in the daylight. It prefers to creep in when the night is quiet and the mind is tired. Anxiety is its companion, slipping in like a draft of cold wind through a crack in the window. At midnight, the house may be silent, but the soul begins to tremble with voices that cannot be silenced by walls. What if I fail? What if I am not enough? What if tomorrow breaks me? These are the incantations whispered into the mind when the defenses of the day are gone. People who stand strong in the sunlight often confess that in the dark they are haunted. It is not superstition to say midnight summons fear. It is reality, one that psychologists and poets, scientists and saints have all described in their own way. At night, the nervous system shifts. The body slows, but the brain refuses to rest. Cortisol, the stress hormone, spikes when sleep is broken and thoughts loop in circles. Anxiety feels sharper at midnight because there are fewer distractions to drown it out. In daylight, you can bury fear under tasks, under laughter, under noise. In darkness, the silence gives fear a microphone. This is why so many lie awake staring at the ceiling, their hearts racing while the rest of the world sleeps. Midnight becomes not a time of peace, but a theater where every shadow looks like a threat. Fear itself is not always the enemy. It is a signal, a reminder of danger, a survival instinct that has kept humans alive for millennia. But when fear overstays its welcome, when it multiplies in the dark, when it whispers of things that may never happen, it ceases to protect and begins to poison. Anxiety is that poison, flooding the body with alarms about threats that exist only in imagination. The witch at midnight does not conjure monsters in the room. She conjures them in the mind, and the mind responds as if they were real. Think of the young person lying awake before an exam, rehearsing every possible mistake. Think of the parent replaying the day, agonizing over every word spoken to a child, fearing they have failed. Think of the elder who feels time slipping and wonders if they have wasted it. None of them are in immediate danger, yet their hearts beat as if they were. The body cannot tell the difference between imagination and reality, so it reacts with panic. Muscles tense, breath shortens, sleep flees. By morning, the person is weary, not because of what happened, but because of what was feared. There is something almost supernatural about the way fear grows in darkness. A creak in the floor becomes an intruder. A pain in the chest becomes a death sentence. A delay in a message becomes rejection. Fear thrives on uncertainty, and uncertainty is amplified at midnight. The shadows in the room become metaphors for shadows in the soul. Anxiety is the echo of that darkness, repeating the same dreadful phrases until they feel like prophecy. And yet, as many discover, when morning comes the shadows vanish, and the thoughts that seemed unbearable now look smaller. This is proof that the midnight fear is not always truth, but illusion given power by silence and fatigue. Still, illusions can wound. People make decisions in those midnight hours that change their lives. They give up on dreams because fear convinces them they are unworthy. They withdraw from relationships because anxiety tells them rejection is inevitable. They self-medicate with substances, distractions, addictions, all to silence the whispering voices. Midnight is not only when fear is felt, it is when fear plants roots if left unchallenged. The ancient texts speak of fear as a spirit, something that enslaves. Whether you read scripture or psychology, the message is similar. Fear left unchecked becomes a master. The Bible says perfect love casts out fear, while modern therapy says truth and acceptance quiet anxiety. Both point to the same reality. Fear is not meant to reign. It is meant to be faced, understood, and dethroned. The tragedy is that many never face it. They run from it by day, they wrestle it by night, and their lives become smaller because of it. But there is another way. Midnight can also be the hour when courage is born. Just as fear speaks loudly in the dark, so can truth if you let it. The same silence that amplifies anxiety can amplify wisdom. The same solitude that breeds panic can breed prayer, reflection, and clarity. History is filled with people who faced their darkest nights and discovered strength. Soldiers in trenches, activists in prison cells, patients in hospital beds, all have testified that fear came at night, but so did courage, if they chose to listen for it. Psychologists speak of reframing, the act of turning fear into a signal for growth. Instead of asking, what if everything goes wrong, one asks, what if something goes right? Instead of replaying failures, one rehearses possibilities. This is not denial, it is discipline. The mind is a garden, and at midnight the soil is wet with vulnerability. You can plant weeds of worry, or you can plant seeds of faith. Both will grow. The choice belongs to you. Consider the story of a young woman who feared speaking in public. Every night before a presentation, she would lie awake, sweating, her thoughts filled with images of humiliation. She nearly gave up her career to avoid the terror. Then she began a new practice. Each midnight when the fear came, she spoke truth aloud. I am prepared. I have something worth saying. Fear is not my master. It felt foolish at first, but over time the script in her mind changed. What once summoned panic began to summon power. She did not eliminate fear, but she dethroned it. She learned that courage is not the absence of fear, it is the decision to move forward despite it. Fear loses its grip when it is named. Anxiety shrinks when it is shared. Midnight fear thrives in secrecy, but once you confess it to a friend, a journal, a prayer, its power diminishes. This is why support groups exist, why therapy works, why communities of faith heal. Fear is a parasite that dies in light. Speak it, and it cannot grow as easily. Hide it, and it multiplies. And yet there is a deeper truth still. At the core of fear is the lie that you are alone. Anxiety whispers that no one understands, that no one can help, that no one cares. The antidote is presence. Presence of others, presence of truth, presence of the divine. People who face their midnight fears often report that the turning point was not the vanishing of problems, but the discovery that they were not alone in them. A single voice saying I am with you can silence 100 voices of fear. The choice each midnight is whether to surrender to the summons of fear or to summon courage in return. Fear says you cannot, courage says you can try. Fear says tomorrow will crush you, courage says tomorrow is unwritten. Fear says you are alone, courage says you are seen. Both voices will speak, but you decide which one to feed. Feed fear, and anxiety becomes your companion. Feed courage, and peace begins to grow. The Witch of Midnight delights in anxiety because it paralyzes. An anxious person is easier to control, easier to distract, easier to drain. But a courageous person, even trembling, is dangerous to the darkness. They will rise, they will act, they will love, they will create. Anxiety says sit still, courage says move forward. And movement, no matter how small, is what breaks the spell. So when the clock strikes 12 and your chest tightens, remember this. Fear is not prophecy. Anxiety is not destiny. They are visitors, and you choose how long they stay. Breathe deeply, speak truth, reach for presence, plant courage. The night may be long, but morning will come, and those who resist the summons of fear will rise stronger, wiser, freer. Fear will always knock, but does not own the house. Anxiety will always whisper, but does not write the story. You have been given the pen. Midnight is only the stage. What you write in those hours will echo through your days. Let it be courage, not chains. Let it be faith, not fear. Let it be the anthem of a soul that faced the shadows and walked forward into light. There comes a moment in every life when you realize the shadows are not stronger than the light. Midnight can trick you into believing it holds all the power, that its whispers, its fears, its chains are unbreakable. Yet the truth has always been that darkness has no strength of its own. It only survives by convincing you to surrender. A candle proves this. Strike one small flame in a vast room of night, and the night runs. It does not argue. It does not resist. It flees. And this is the lesson hidden in every midnight. Light is always stronger, but you must choose to ignite it. The spell of midnight is subtle. It convinces you that you are powerless. It tells you the hour belongs to it, that your habits, your wounds, your fears, your temptations will always define you. But this is an illusion, one that falls apart the moment you take back even the smallest choice. People believe transformation requires thunder, some grand event that shakes the earth. Yet in truth, most chains are broken by one simple act repeated faithfully. Turning off the screen, closing the bottle, choosing sleep, speaking a prayer, writing the truth, calling a friend. These are not dramatic, but they are powerful. Each small choice is a match struck against the darkness, and if you keep striking, the shadows will lose their grip. Think of a soldier in battle. He does not win the war in a single clash, but by refusing to surrender each ground he takes. You too are in a battle, and the battleground is your midnight hour. Each night you choose either to give territory to the shadows or to take it back for the light. Do not underestimate how much power lies in 1 hour of discipline, 1 hour of rest, 1 hour of courage. Every dawn that follows will bear witness to the choice you made while the world was sleeping. There are stories written across centuries of those who broke the spell. Some were enslaved by substances, some by fear, some by endless distraction, yet each found a turning point. That turning point was not always when their circumstances changed, but when they decided within themselves that they would no longer bow to the voices of the night. A man once told me he had battled anxiety for years, until one midnight he stood up, walked to the mirror, and declared aloud that fear would no longer own him. Nothing magical happened in that instant, but he kept declaring it each night, and in time the declaration became reality. His mind rewrote itself, his heart learned a new rhythm, his days began to carry peace. It all began because he chose to strike a match instead of letting the darkness remain unchallenged. Psychology calls this neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reshape itself through repeated choices. Spirit calls it renewal, the soul's ability to be transformed through discipline and faith. Both describe the same mystery. You are not locked into your midnight patterns forever. You can choose again. You can rewire your thoughts. You can train your emotions. You can restore your purpose. And it begins not with tomorrow's promise, but with tonight's decision. The spell breaks the moment you choose light. Still, the choice is not easy. Midnight is seductive. Its promises feel warm even as they burn. The comfort of habit feels safer than the risk of change. That is why so many remain in bondage, not because they love the chains, but because they fear what life will feel like without them. The smoker wonders how they will soothe stress. The drinker wonders how they will face sorrow. The worrier wonders who they will be without anxiety. The distracted wonder what will rise in the silence. It takes courage to step out of the familiar shadows, even when the shadows are killing you. Yet courage is born not from knowing every answer, but from trusting that light is waiting once you step forward. You do not need to see the whole path to take the first step. You do not need to know how the story ends to begin a new chapter. The spell of midnight tells you that change must be absolute or it is worthless. The truth is that change is often small, fragile, imperfect at first, falling and rising again. 2 steps forward, 1 step back. It is messy, but it is real. Every stumble is still progress if you refuse to quit. Light is patient. It does not demand perfection. It only asks that you keep walking toward it. Think of a seed buried underground. It does not burst into a tree in one night. It pushes slowly, inch by inch, through the soil, unseen at first. Yet one day it breaks into the open air and grows strong. Breaking the spell is like that. At first the progress is invisible. The nights still feel heavy, the temptations still loud, the fears still sharp. But as you keep choosing, keep planting, keep striking matches, something shifts. The soil gives way, the roots take hold, life breaks through, and suddenly what was once unthinkable is now your reality. Community is one of the greatest weapons against the spell. Darkness wants you isolated, convinced you must fight alone. But light spreads faster when it is shared. A single candle burns bravely, but 1,000 together can be seen for miles. This is why confession heals, why friendship strengthens, why love restores. The midnight spell weakens when someone sits beside you and says, "I know, I've been there, and I will not leave." Humans were never meant to fight alone. Your burden halves when shared, and your courage doubles when another believes in you. The shadows know this, which is why they whisper that no one would understand, that no one would care. Do not listen. Reach out. Invite someone into your midnight, and you will see how quickly the spell loses its hold. Faith is another weapon. Not superstition, not ritual, but faith, the conviction that there is something greater than fear, greater than temptation, greater than addiction, greater than anxiety. Faith in God, faith in truth, faith in love. Even those who doubt often admit that when they call out in their darkest nights, something answers. Call it grace, call it strength, call it the divine presence. Whatever name you give it, it is real. And it changes everything. The spell of midnight is strong, but the one who made the stars has never lost a battle with darkness. When you lean on that presence, you discover you are not fighting with your strength alone. And then there is purpose. The spell of midnight thrives in those who have forgotten why they are alive. When you do not know your purpose, every temptation feels convincing, every distraction feels satisfying, every fear feels overwhelming. But when you carry a vision, a calling, a reason for your breath, you look at midnight differently. You realize you cannot afford to give your hours away. You realize your days matter too much to waste. Purpose makes discipline natural because you are no longer just resisting the dark, you are pursuing the light. You are building something worth guarding. This is why artists create, why parents nurture, why builders build, why healers heal. Each has tasted the temptation of midnight, but each has chosen to invest their time in something that outlives the shadows. When your life is anchored in purpose, the witch of midnight may whisper, but her voice is drowned out by the roar of destiny. You rise each morning knowing you are part of a story larger than your fears, larger than your wounds, larger than your chains. And no spell can survive against a soul that burns with such fire. So let me ask you this. When your midnight comes tonight, what will you choose? Will you let the whispers write your story, or will you strike the match? Will you plant weeds of despair, or will you plant seeds of courage? Will you surrender to shadows, or will you walk toward light? The spell is only as strong as your silence. Break it by speaking truth, by choosing love, by reaching for presence, by guarding your time, by daring to hope. The midnight will not vanish, but its power will. And you will discover that even in the darkest hour, the dawn is already being prepared. Do not underestimate the miracle of a single decision. Empires rise on decisions. Families are healed by decisions. Lives are transformed by decisions. Tonight could be the night you decide. Not a grand announcement to the world, but a quiet resolve in your own heart. I will not live as a prisoner. I will not give away my hours. I will not bow to fear. I will choose the light, even if my voice trembles, even if my steps are small. For every great story begins with a trembling choice, and every great victory begins with a flicker of courage. Midnight will come again, as it always does. But when it comes, you need not fear. You carry the match. You carry the flame. You carry the power to break the spell. And if you choose it, no darkness can stop you from walking into the dawn with strength, with freedom, with hope alive in your soul. There is a moment when the heart knows the truth it has been running from, and that truth is this: the midnight hour may be full of whispers, but it does not own you. Darkness has always been loud, but light has always been stronger. For too long, many have lived as though the shadows had the final word, as though their fears and their habits were carved in stone. Yet every chain can be broken, every path can be changed, every soul can rise again. The night is not your enemy. It is a test of your courage, a stage where your decisions reveal who you are becoming. Think of the generations before you who stood in their own midnights. Some faced wars, some faced loss, some faced private battles no one else could see. And still they chose light. They passed the torch forward so that you could be here today. That torch is now in your hands. What you do with your midnight hours will decide not only your story, but the story of those who will look back and say your name with gratitude. Fear will always try to convince you to wait until tomorrow. Yet tomorrow is shaped by what you dare to choose tonight. That is why the call is urgent, why the whisper of destiny is louder than the whisper of despair. You cannot afford to surrender another hour to shadows that only survive because you feed them. Light is waiting for you, and it always was. There will be setbacks. There will be nights that feel heavier than others. But even then, remember this, you are not alone. Every soul that chooses truth, every heart that clings to purpose, every voice that prays for strength joins you in a chorus that has echoed across centuries. You walk with unseen companions. You rise with countless witnesses cheering you on. And you carry within you more power than the night can ever take away. So when the clock strikes 12 again, let it not be a mark of fear, but a trumpet of courage. Let it remind you that even in the deepest night, dawn is already being prepared for you. And when you step into that dawn, you will not be the same. You will be stronger. You will be wiser. You will be free. The choice is in your hands. Strike the match. Light the flame. Walk into tomorrow with a soul untouchable by darkness. And never forget, the midnight hour was never meant to break you. It was meant to reveal the light that was already burning inside you.